okay.
I'm still the big sister, right?
Yes.
Yes, I'm a big brother. Well, I'm big sister. Mom, mommy told me the news. She's gonna have a baby. No, she's not.
I'm not having another baby.
No, I said Zawa.
Mm,
I'm talking about Zawa. You said a new baby.
no, that's not
Zawa's not a
negative.
new baby. She been.
We're gonna wait for a couple people to come on because I'm super excited about this topic. And everybody that comes in, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're hitting the subscribe button if you're new and you're not aware. Get your butt back. This is not for you. No, goodbye. This is not for you. Both of y'all need to go because this is not a conversation for kids. Thank you. Yep, take your blanket. Go downstairs.
Hey, Jimmy, just close the door.
Well, you can open it. Sheesh. So I'm gonna wait around a little bit for people to pop in. And yeah, so. Mm, mm. And if nobody shows up, that's okay. We'll just go to the other channel and have people come on this channel. Hello, how are you? What's up? We're going to be talking about parenting with bipolar and raising a child with bipolar. I guess not. One is going off. Mm-mm-mm. Boom, boom, boom. Guess not. Mm. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the new show. Hey, everyone coming in. I'm just giving it some time for people to come in because this is a new channel. So I'm giving it some time before we start the topic. Um, Typically, I would use a different program, but I didn't want to take any chances. So I'm just going live strictly off of YouTube. Because they finally approved your girl to get uh, the ability to go live. So I wanted to talk about this topic for a while. I've been trying to talk about this topic for a while, and it's been really hard for me to do it. If you didn't watch my other channel where I was sharing about like the struggles of going live, because I've been wanting to go live to talk about this topic for a while, and I just didn't put it out there about why I was so upset and passionate about wanting to go live, and this is the reason why. So if you guys are interested, give this video a thumbs up, hit get in the chats, ask questions, start a discussion, whatever works for you. Because I know a lot of people may have questions or concerns about what the topic is about. So, um, yeah. Um, and I do have like a list, like I have notes because I wanted to talk about my experience, um, my decision to talk to openly discuss it online, um, enforcing treatment, as well as a treatment plan, coping skills, family support, family therapy, accountability, transparency. And then if you guys have any questions and answers that you want, then we can talk about that at the end. So that's pretty much the layout of how I want this live to go. But I do have my notes over here so that I don't get off track, because y'all know I will get off track and discuss other things that have nothing to do with the topic and go somewhere else with it. So if you're joining me, give this video a thumbs up, share it, because I believe there could be other people out there that might um, benefit from this. So if you're new to my channel, or you just decided to click on it and you're not sure what and who I am, my name is Vicky. Well, I usually go by Vicky. My real name is Victoria, as you can tell from the channel name. My real name is Victoria, but I go by Vicky. I've been going by Vicky since I was like 2. So everybody calls me Vicky, and it's just natural for me. But for the purpose of this channel, I decided to say use my real name, because this is going to be a channel that's strictly about things that we really can't talk about, or things that people feel uncomfortable talking about, or have unpopular opinions. This is a safe space, no judgment, no drama. As soon as you pop off in the comments, we're going to have a problem, and you're going to have to block you or time you out. But for today's topic, I did want to talk about how I'm parenting with bipolar, as well as raising a child with bipolar. And the reason being is because I don't see this stuff. This is nothing I've ever seen online. I've tried to Google it, and it's usually either you're parenting with bipolar or you're raising a child with bipolar. It's never something where it's together. And I guess in our situation, it's something unique, and it's something that I wanted to discuss and talk to you guys about, and see if maybe somebody else is probably going through the same thing. And I want them to know, like, you're not alone. So in the beginning, I wanted to, share a little bit about myself. I do have another YouTube channel. It's called Life of Vicky. That's where I share about my life. I vlog every day. I do like random stuff like cooking and hauls, as well as sharing about my life, like the raw, the real, and the ugly. But over here, it's gonna be a little different. We're not gonna be discussing about life and kids and stuff like that. We're gonna be discussing serious topics, current events, um, reactions to other things that's going on, and no, not reactions to like YouTubers. I'm talking about reactions to like viral videos, or conversations that's going on, or what people might have said that other people might feel is wrong or right. And in my experience, I feel like that um doing YouTube is an outlet for a lot of people. For me, it is an outlet. I allow it to be kind of like a journal, like a diary in some cases. Sometimes I share, too much about my life, I guess, to some people, but I feel like at the same time, it's important for people to see a different side of people and see a different perception of life. But as far as my experience with bipolar, I was diagnosed when I was 17, and I didn't take it seriously. And so much not seriously, but I knew the risk of being on medication and being pregnant. And I chose to be pregnant and have a whole bunch of babies before I was like 23. I had 4 kids under the age of 4. And even then, after that, I still didn't get any treatment. I still had like sort of a delusion, because I talk about be delusional, or be no, in my mind I was really delusional about my disability. I mean, my disorder. Hey Anna Marie, hey Shauna. So I really was like dismissing the fact that I had bipolar. And I just ignored the signs of, the compulsive choices and the excessive spending, because your girl can got expensive taste, and I like to spend money. As well as, the mood swings and the manic episodes. I chose to ignore those things because I thought that, like, that's just who I am. That's me. That's who makes me me. And so until, 2019, I actually had a miscarriage, which brought out more of my symptoms, as well as caused me to, fall into a severe depression. And when I say severe, it got to the point where I barely wanted to get out the bed. I was crying all the time. I was lashing out all the time. I stopped taking care of myself, not just, my mental health, but I was like physically, like my hygiene. I wasn't doing my hair, I wasn't brushing my teeth. I was just, taking it 20 minutes at a time, day by day. I was basically on autopilot, meaning like I just got up and did what I had to do to provide for my family, and then I went to bed. Um, it wasn't so much of like I had it together and I was being my authentic self. And I think a lot of people noticed that on my other channel. I think a lot of people may have noticed that I lacked a lot of, self-confidence, as well as the fact that I let myself go and in a lot of ways, not just, my facial expressions or my hair or anything, but like how I dressed. I also dressed like as if like sweat clothes and sweatshirts and sweatpants because I was not confident in myself. I was basically like trying to hide who I was and what I was dealing with at the time. And mostly it was because I was depressed. I was extremely depressed. It got to the point where sometimes I would go weeks without taking a shower. I would go weeks without brushing my teeth because I was that depressed. I had my husband would do the laundry and he would have it set aside for me, and I would just let the basket fill up for months at a time. And that's my experience with, the last couple years. I want to say when I was 19 is when I completely cut off therapy and medication, and I'm 34 now. So, that's a long time to go without being untreated and not realizing that you are, having these symptoms that are not normal. Um, and one thing I will give it to my husband, he knew, but at the same time he chose not to, say things that was going to be hurtful, or say things, to make me feel worse than I already felt about myself and the things that I was saying to myself mentally. And then once I got my diagnosis, he was like, I already knew it, but I chose not to say anything because at the end of the day, you're my wife and I will love you unconditionally. But he was like, I'm just very proud of you for actually taking the time to think about what it is that is important to you. And for me, it was my kids. And my daughter started displaying the same symptoms at 15, and I guess for me it was like looking in a reflection of a mirror, because I seen her react, like her symptoms and how she was displaying herself, and her manic episodes and her depressive state. And it kind of was like me looking at myself, and it was like me like, wow, like something is really going on here. And and I told myself I can't preach or force my child to do therapy or to get help if I'm not doing it myself, knowing deep down I have bipolar disorder. And so it took a while for me to make it going and like, making it happen, because of COVID happened. And then with COVID happening, so many people needed mental health services, so everybody was backlogged. It was hard for me to like quickly get into somewhere. I did do like an online telehealth, but they couldn't really help me as much as they could, because of the simple fact that my mental health is on an extreme side compared to somebody that's dealing with depression or anxiety. For me, it was I needed to admit myself in order to get the help that I needed. But I felt like I would be a bad mom if I took that time to go seek help and get evaluated and get on the medication and do inpatient. And it was hard because there was times where I've snapped and said I want to leave because I couldn't take it. I was severely depressed, to the point where I wanted to die. Even with all my kids, I wanted to die. And I told myself, and I kept repeating to myself, I refuse to go back to a dark place, even if it meant that I had to leave my home and my kids, or I had to go to a mental hospital. And thankfully, if it wasn't for my husband and my mother-in-law, I probably would have left. Um, with their support and everything that they helped me, and they try to help me, push through and try to explain to the kids what's been going on, and what I'm going through, and it was hard. Um, but I will say, ultimately, it was my daughter who woke me the fuck up and made me realize that, you know, I shouldn't be ashamed or afraid to ask for help, because then that shows my kids that it's not okay to ask for help. It's not okay to, seek any mental health because you're going to be viewed as crazy or something's wrong with you. And that's not the case, you know. Um, oh, I didn't want to cry, but that's just how it is. Um, the reason why I chose to discuss my life or the situation with my daughter was because it needs to be talked about. We need to have this conversation. And honestly, it was the bulk of what my life was like. And if you follow my other channel, you guys probably have noticed that I would go MIA, disappear from YouTube, and that's because of mental health. It's because of what I was dealing with when it came to my daughter. It was because of me struggling with depression and me struggling with, how to manage what was going on, because at the time I assumed I was the worst person in the world. I was the bad mom. I wasn't doing enough. So I was stretching myself super thin between working, going to school, trying to be a better parent, without any treatment, without any hospitals, no doctors, no medication, nothing. And it wasn't until, my daughter ran away. And then that's when I was like, okay, I need help. This is beyond my control. Um, I know my daughter needs me, but it's some I'm not necessarily what she needs. And then that's when I kept pushing hard, trying to get help and everything. And it wasn't until I seen her, making homicidal, things like artwork and words and stuff, that I said, I need to talk about this online. I need to tell people that this shit is real and that kids are suffering. And she even says it, she says there's a lot of kids in school that are struggling mentally, and they're just labeled as bad kids, but really they need somebody to help them to get through it, because they don't know how to ask for help because of the culture and the stigma behind mental health and why it's so bad. Um, that's why I kind of decided to put it out there, because I felt like it was a conversation that not just, kids to see, but also parents. Because sometimes as parents, we're so focused on making sure that the kids are taken care of, and getting them up for school, making sure they're bathed and fed, and making sure our house is good and paying all the bills. Sometimes we forget to really like sit back and ask them real questions, not like, well, how was your day going? No, we need to ask our kids more like deeper questions, like, you know, how does this make you feel? Um, what is it that you expect of me as your parent? What do you need from me as your parent? Why why are you doing this when something like this is happening? Like for my daughter, when she's having anxiety, she, starts pacing, she starts shaking. And then my anxiety is where I'm crying, I'm shaking, I'm sweating profusely. Whereas my husband's anxiety is where he's pacing, and he's shaking, and he wants, and he starts yelling and screaming. So like everybody's idea of what anxiety or a panic attack looks like is not the same. It's not. Some people's ideas of what a panic attack looks like is not the same. Not everybody's sitting there going, no, that's not what everybody's look like. Everybody's anxiety is completely different from the next person. Some people have anxiety and are having a panic attack, and they make it into a situation where they're becoming a comedic, or being trying to be funny, and not realizing that they're having a panic attack, and trying to get out of the panic attack, they make jokes, or they point out something else to make themselves not the center of attention because they're dealing with anxiety. Um, so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because we all have this idea in our mind what depression looks like, what anxiety looks like, what bipolar looks like, what schizophrenia looks like, and I grew up around, my uncles that were that had mental health issues, as well as my mom. So, a lot of people choose not to get help. In many cases, I've seen people choose drugs instead of facing what they're going through with their mental health. And I've seen people choose alcohol instead of, getting the help that they needed with their mental health. And, a lot of people, don't correlate, drug abuse and alcohol abuse with mental health, because it's not treated the same way when it comes to the resources. But really, it is the same thing. And what it really boils down to is that the person is not, I don't want to say they're not strong enough, but their mind is not capable of processing and learning and unlearning everything that they were taught to handle trauma and to handle certain situations. So it's best for them to shut down and use drugs or alcohol to deal with it. Um, as far as like enforcing treatment, I enforced treatment on my daughter, and a lot of people might think that was wrong, or they might assume that like I just didn't want her or I didn't love her, so that's why I constantly kept her in mental hospitals, and that wasn't the case. I just knew something was going on. I knew that there was something deeper than just an adolescent situation. I knew it was something deeper than her wanting to be grown and wanting to run the streets. I knew there was something more to it. Like, you know, me being angry, yes. Me being hurt, yes. I have said some things like, you know what, she can't come home. I don't want nothing to do with her, because I was hurt and I was angry and I was frustrated because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help her. I didn't know where to get help from, because, as soon as, CPS was involved, they would close the case, even with me begging them to keep the case open so that I can continue to get the providers to come and provide services and, be a resource for me and our family. Um, and mind you, for 2 years, we were all stuck in a house for a year and a half, 2 years. So it was not like it was, easy for people to come out, or easy for us to go out and get any kind of mental health. And then at the same time, like I said, so many people needed it that there was a backlog. There's a waiting list. I know some places there's like a 6 to 8 week waiting list for people to even get seen by a therapist because so many people need it. And I feel like the pandemic opened up a lot of people's eyes about mental health and how much it affected them. And a lot of people just, you know, still look at it as like a stigma, because, I have people, try to talk crap about my face and my teeth and how I appear. And it's like, you don't realize what mental health looks like, because what you're seeing is me in the heart, in the core part of my mental health. If I look like I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not doing my hair, I'm not, taking care of my body, I'm not eating correctly, I'm not sleeping well, that's because I'm struggling with mental health. I'm dealing with a mental illness. Um, so for me, I kept enforcing it, because, when they say, if the child's saying that they want to harm themselves or harm somebody else, or they are harming themselves with like cutting or scratching or whatever, you're supposed to take it seriously. And for me, I didn't take it seriously in the beginning. I just assumed it was, siblings being siblings fighting with each other. And when my daughter stabbed my son in the face with the pencil and like went like this, like she literally stabbed him and went down, and he had a scar on his face, and that should have been the first sign that something was wrong. But I didn't think of it like that. I just thought he was annoying her, and her reaction was, "Get out my face," and that's what happened. So I kept enforcing it, and I forced it on not just her but also on myself. I enforced it on Leon, my husband. I enforced it on my other kids as well. And I also tried to advocate for my mother-in-law because, she can't afford, her co-pays because she's on a fixed income. So, it's not just me enforcing it on her. It was me also taking accountability for the fact that I was not mentally stable to provide for my child in a way that she needed to be provided for, because I was not ready. And I'm still not ready. Like I told her, like I just told her, we're gonna take it day by day, and as things come up, then we will compromise and talk it out and discuss what is best and what's not good, because there's no book on this. There's no understanding or knowledge behind what to do when you're raising a child with bipolar and you have bipolar as well. Um, as far as like treatment plan, I'm on medication. My daughter's on medication as well. We both take the same medication for our, this disorder, and and it seems to be helping. It's not just helping me, but it's also helping her. I notice a huge difference now that she has been properly diagnosed with bipolar, and she's on the correct medication that she needs to be on. And it's just, I feel like, it's not just the medication that needs to be um, given to people, because I noticed that, as a child, it was just always about medication. It was never about coping skills. It was never about family based therapy. It was never about support groups or anything like that. And now things are different. Like, like years later now, like there's so many resources. We're doing, family based therapy. I'm doing trauma therapy as well, because I know that I have PTSD from my childhood. And I've said this years ago. If you've been following my channel, my original channel for years, in the beginning, I even said, like, I know there's a lot of things that happened in my childhood, and it's why I parent the way I parent, because I don't know any better. I don't know any different than what somebody else knows. Um, and so, and I will say that I sheltered my kids more than I gave them the freedom, meaning that they weren't allowed to go nowhere, meaning I wouldn't let them go outside unless they were in my sight. I wouldn't let them even go to a friend's house. They weren't even allowed to cross the street by themselves to go to the corner store. And my kids was it was so bad to the point that, like, I couldn't even send my son to the car to go get something, because I was afraid of something happening to him because of the trauma I experienced. So I sheltered my kids really, really bad. And a lot of people might be like, "Oh, you were strict." No, I wasn't strict. I was sheltering them. I was secluding them from the world because of how much PTSD I experienced as a child, like so much of it in the trauma I experienced, that I was afraid of them experiencing anything that I experienced. I lived in fear, basically, um, to the point where I was afraid that they would, like, even if they went outside for 5 minutes, I was scared that something bad was going to happen. And so that leads me to where we're at today, because now my kids are older and they're like, well, we kind of want to experience things on our own. We don't need you to hold our hand anymore. And it was hard for me to, accept that. It was hard for me to be like, okay, be free. And I wasn't ready for that. Now I am, because I've been doing therapy, and I've been working through, the trauma and everything. And now I'm at a place that I accept that my kids are getting older, and they still need me, but it's at a point where it's like in between, where they need me but they don't need me for certain things. And it was hard. um and as far as, like, the coping skills, Um, it's a trial and error, and that's one thing in our family. If you don't know, there's a TV show called Daniel Tiger, and it's been like it's kind of funny for us in our family, but there's a song that he sings about being mad and being upset, and then how to count, take a deep breath and then count into four. Well, before that show was even brought into our lives, me and Leon were already working towards that. Like we were like if I noticed he was getting anxious, I would like breathe, breathe. And it's the same thing with like our 4-year-old and and all the other kids. Like if I noticed that it was an anxiety with them, I'd be like, relax and breathe. Think about what you're going to say, or think about what you want to say before you say it, because they will be all over the place. And and their anxiety comes from the fact that I shelter them, and that's something that I had to accept, that their anxiety is from me sheltering them. They're not aware of the real world, and now they're learning about the real world, so they have a lot of anxiety because of what they're experiencing in the real world. They're now seeing their friends going through stuff. They see things happening at school, they hear things that's happening at school, and so like for them, they're not used to that, so it's unusual for them to um see those things and hear about those things. So they're like what is going on? And they come home upset, and they're bothered because it's not what they're used to, because I shelter them so much to the point that I gave them this fairy tale idea that the world is perfect, there's no bad things going to happen. And it wasn't until the pandemic happened that I was trying to get them to understand that this is the real world. And then the Black Lives Matters movement happened, where um, people were dying, and it was difficult for us to try and explain it to our kids, what they were seeing on TV and in the news about what it's like to be black or a minority in this country. And it was unusual for them, and they were afraid of that situation. And so we started buying books and having discussions and watching news, and trying to get them to understand certain things. And it kind of helps that my mother-in-law lives with us, because she's only 63. So when she was a child, she just started going to a segregated school, so she has experienced racism in some way. And and it was not easy for our kids during the pandemic. It wasn't even easy for us. So as far as like family support, thankfully we have that, not just inside the household but outside the household. There's tons of family support. And I'm thankful for that, because not a lot of people have that family support, where they can talk to somebody and they understand, or talk to somebody and they're not gonna judge them, or they can vent, or they can call somebody and cry and say, I'm just struggling with something, or can we go out real quick, go get something to eat, or go get a drink, or can we just go for a walk? Not many people have that support behind them, and that's one thing that I'm thankful that I have, because there's some people out there that don't have that. So I'm going to pause real quick and read some of the comments. So grateful. She said, thank you so much for sharing your story. My oldest daughter is bipolar also. I blacked out in a panic attack. My body shuts down. Yes, my daughter got addicted to Xanax, which led to heroin, and she disappeared to Cali. It was so hard. And see, that's heartbreaking, because I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence. I grew up in a home where there was sexual abuse. I grew up in a home where there was alcohol and drug abuse. So, and then I also had my mother, who did not raise me, deal with bipolar herself, as well as alcohol and drug abuse. So for me growing up seeing those things, I knew what not to do, or I knew what I did not want for myself or my kids, um, which led to me sheltering them and keeping them secluded from the world. Um, and in a way it was good, but at the same time it was not healthy for either them or me, because I was the type of parent that I was too scared to even leave my kids home. I was so scared to leave them home alone. It wasn't until We went to a welfare office, and the guy was asking about childcare, and he asked about my second son, who is at the time was 8, and he said, he's capable of, you know, being home by himself. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, like he can stay home by himself. Like if you want childcare for him, you can, but it's by law, he's allowed to stay home by himself. And even then, hearing that, like, it still didn't sink in. I still had that fear of, if I leave my kids home alone, something bad's going to happen. But it took a while for me. Now I'm at the point where it's like, I have a 15-year-old who's about to be 16. I have a 14-year-old who's about to be 15. And I have a 13-year-old who's about to be 14. And now it's at a point where I'm not afraid to leave the house, even if it's to go into the corner store quickly, for them to sit and watch the baby or their 4-year-old sister. Um, it took me a while to get there. Leon's not there yet. He's like, no. As far as like family therapy, we haven't started that yet because every time we get started, something happens and then they have to discharge and we have to start it again. So the little bit of therapy that we have done is helped a lot, especially for me, because it kind of forced me to respect my kids, not just want to control every single aspect of their lives, but it taught me that, like, yes, I can have expectations, yes, I can have boundaries, but my kids also can have those things too. It's not just one sided where because I'm the adult and I'm the one that pays the bills, I'm the only one that is allowed to have boundaries and demand respect. No, it's also where your child can also have boundaries and demand respect in return. And so that's what I've learned through family therapy, which was, an eye opener. And we're supposed to be starting family therapy again. And I'm hoping, this time it's a little different because, my daughter was inpatient for 2 months. I'm not even going to count the 8 hours that she was, discharged for, because technically, um, she wasn't even home for a full 24 hours before she was admitted again. So for the last 2 months, she's been inpatient and she's now finally home. You guys will see that on my other channel if you guys are interested. But I'm still uploading videos from May, so bear with me. um, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to family therapy, and now I understand that I was pushing for therapy for my daughter and family therapy for my daughter, but it really wasn't for her. It was for me, because I feel like I needed it for myself, not realizing I just needed to schedule myself an appointment for um therapy for myself. And it wasn't until, the third or fourth time was when I was like, I've been pushing this, but it's really not for you. It's really for me, because I feel like I can learn something from it so that I could be a better parent, only for me to get into therapy and realize that I needed to be a better me. And the only way that I could be a better mom is to be a better me. Um, and basically, like, short term, layman terms, you know, I'm saying it in a way where people can understand. But basically, therapy was like, forget the kids. Who is you? Who are you? You know, you, like, where's Victoria at? Like, who she is? Like, forget about the kids. Like, at this point, and sometimes people will say like, fuck them kids, and people don't understand what that means. They just automatically assume that you don't want to be bothered with your kids, and that's not the case. What it means is that, for a lot of us parents, is that we put so much into our kids, and sometimes we spend our last $20 on our kids instead of ourselves, knowing that we need something for ourselves. And it gets to a point where, we're like, you know what, fuck them kids, because I give so much of myself to them, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. And a lot of us moms, we do, because we're the nurturer, we're the caregivers, we're the lunch lady, we're the nurse, we're the uh, housekeepers. So we give so much to our kids, and then when we finally get to that point, and like at that age where it just like clicks for us, And we're like, you know what? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, fuck them kids. They can manage on their own. It's not that difficult for them to pop something in the microwave and cook it for themselves. It's not that difficult for them to, pick up their own laundry and wash it themselves. And that's what that terminology means. And a lot of people take it the wrong way, but it has nothing to really do meaning like, you know, really fuck them kids. No, like we're really just saying at that time, like what we're really saying is that we're taking our power back and finding ourselves again, not just as a mom, but as a woman and as a person ourselves. And a lot of people aren't ready to hear that, but for me, I wasn't ready to hear that until I got into therapy. And that's when my therapist was like, you lost yourself. You spent most of your time focused on being a mom, a stay-at-home mom at that, and you basically made your kids your whole world and you lost yourself. So now you need to find yourself again. You need to figure out who you are. And it's best if you do it, medicated, not unmedicated. It's best that we have a treatment plan. It's best that, you see a psychiatrist so that way you can get on medication and, to help yourself figure out who you are as a person, not just as a mom or a wife, and it took me a while to understand that. And I've been on medication for about 4 months now, 4 or 5 months, and I noticed a huge difference. I'm now to the point where I'm still clutterish. Like you don't want to see my side of the bedroom, but I'm getting a lot better with it. I'm not just leaving it sit there for months at a time. I'm starting to get into a routine, and I'm so proud of myself to the point where like I can actually get up in the morning, brush my teeth, wash my face, and put my contacts in and attempt to do something to my hair, whereas I've never was able to do that. I was so severely depressed to the point where I couldn't even do that for myself, and it was hard. Um, as far as taking accountability, um, it was hard to take accountability. Um, but it took when I did finally accept my mistakes and my faults. Um, that's when I was able to be like, you know what, I fucked up and I made a lot of mistakes. And I'm not saying, when it comes to financial situations, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the choices I made to parent my kids, instead of allowing them to um join extracurricular activities or go hang out with friends that they have made. um I made a lot of mistakes in that area, and my part of taking accountability is how I reacted, not how I responded, but how I reacted to certain situations that was triggering to me, not realizing that the reason why I was being triggered was because it was something that I experienced growing up. So that's where I was taking accountability at. Like, the yelling and hitting the kids, because even though at one point I was doing a gentle parenting and all that, but because we were homeless, that was a trauma for me. So it was hard for me to, continue that aspect of gentle parenting, because I had so many other things going on and I was constantly living in fear that hitting my kids was the best way for me to express how I felt, when even though it was the wrong way to express how I felt. Um, and that's because I was frustrated, I was angry, I was resentful, I was bitter because of the fact that we were homeless. And so now that we're in a stable housing and we're stable and living where we're living, and this is the longest place that we ever lived at, it's now unusual for us. It's weird, even for Araya at one point, it was hard for her to detach from me and Leon because she grew up in a hotel. She was born in a hotel. When I gave birth to her, we brought her to a hotel, and she basically grew up her first year in a hotel. So when we moved into this house, it was unusual for her to have her own bedroom. It was unusual for her to have a bed. So it took a long time for her to get out of that to where she can now just walk away and go in her room and hang out and have fun by herself. Now it's at a point where she doesn't constantly need to be up underneath someone. And a lot of people took it as like I was giving her more favoritism, but that wasn't the case. It was separation anxiety for her. She was struggling herself, adapting to a new lifestyle, adapting to a new way of living, because she was so used to us all being together in one room. If you never been in a hotel with a double bed, that's basically what we were living in. It was all five, wait, seven of us at that time living in one room for basically a year and a half. And so for her, it was hard for her to get out of that. And now after 3 years, she don't pay me no mind. Sometimes she wants the time and the attention. She'll tell me, we need a mother and daughter date, or I need to spend time with you. And I listen, because I didn't do that before. I was so stretching myself so thin between work and school, and trying to be a better parent, that I wasn't listening to that. And I'm not saying that I wasn't listening to that when it came to Araya, to my 5-year-old. I wasn't listening to that when it came to my teenagers. Even though my 4-year-old at the time was saying it, it wasn't clicking in my head that I needed to do that for the older ones as well. um, and now I understand it. So now I'm making more of an effort to make sure that there's that one-on-one time with each of the kids, not just the girls, but also the boys. Even though the boys, they it's like a love-hate relationship with us. Not, I shouldn't say love-hate. It's more of like your mom, so you're not cool. It's more of like, you're not into what I'm into, because they're more into like video games and editing and coding. Like I do coding and I do the editing, so like sometimes they interact with me, because when I'm editing a video, they're like, "Oh, do this and do that with this section, and do that and do that. Add a sound effect in this part." Because it'll be cool or funny to them, to other people. So like sometimes my videos will be different, and that's because the kids are helping me with um, the editing aspect of it. And sometimes, the views might be different, the angles might be different, because they're holding the camera and they're participating in what I'm doing. And that was something I never did before. I didn't allow them to participate in the channel and into my job, because I felt like I had to do it all alone on my own. And now that they're older, I can, incorporate them into what I do, because I love it. And they get to learn something too. They get to learn some skills. They get to learn how to code. They get to learn how to edit videos. They get to learn how to, do different things when it comes to taking pictures and doing video. So for them, it's, our one-on-one time when it comes with the boys, especially with Justice. He likes to do stop motion. So like I help him with his lighting setup, and I'll help him with the editing aspect, even though he really don't need my help, but it's something for us to do one on one. Whereas with the girls, I can go with them and we can go get our nails done, and we go out to eat, or we'll go shopping together, one on one or together as a group. It depends, because I know with the age gap between the 5-year-old and the teenagers, sometimes the 5-year-old wants to go to Chuck E. Cheese, but the teenagers want to go to the mall. So sometimes, we either have to compromise where we all do it together in the same day, or I just take one at a time, so that way that they all feel like they're getting time with me. And it's the same with my husband, because they all want to feel like they're being included in something. And then it's also, reminding them as well that, yes, we get one-on-one time with each other, but mom and dad also needs to have their time together too, without the kids. And that's difficult for the 5-year-old, and it's hard for her to understand that, um that mom and dad we need our own time too. Sometimes she'd be like, well, I want to date with you and dad. And we're like, no, we take you a lot of places. When we go shopping, you're coming with us. And then we also did that too with the kids, so that way they can get out the house. During the pandemic, we would take like one or two kids with us at a time, so that way they were getting out of the house, so that they weren't stuffed up in the house all the time. And we still do it now. Like if if it depends though, because if I'm the type of person that has like a tunnel vision and I have a budget and they ask me to come with, I always say no because I don't want to overspend more because I know they're going to ask for something. But if I know if I have it in my budget and I know I can spend that little extra money, I'm like, yeah, sure, come on. And then if they ask for something, yep, you can have it. Especially if depending on how their behavior is, then that's what happens. Um, and transparency. A lot of times it's hard for people to be transparent and not just to the world, but with each other, with family members. That was something that me and Leon, I want to say in 2016, we both made a goal for that year to be more accountable to each other as well as to ourselves, and also to be transparent to each other and ourselves as well. And we even said, like, look, if we can't be honest with each other, we definitely not being honest to ourselves. And if you can't be honest with yourself, how can you be honest with your partner? Or how can you be honest with your children? Or how can you be honest with your sister or your brother or your mother? Like, and sometimes there has to be that boundary with it, but at the same time, you have to be real transparent and vulnerable and honest with people that you're in a relationship with, whether if it's platonic, whether if it's romantic, whether if it's blood related. You have to have that understanding in that relationship of boundaries and respect and trust and honesty and communication and unconditional love, because there's times where I can't stand my husband. He gets on my nerves, but I know there's times where he can't stand me and I get on his nerves. But there's always that unconditional love, and we can be honest with each other, and say and tell the other person how we feel without it, turning into a huge argument, or where it gets to the point where we're like, I want a divorce. And that's not healthy for our kids to hear that. If we're constantly battling each other and arguing with each other and saying things that we really don't mean, that's not going to teach our kids what a healthy relationship looks like. So we have to be transparent and we have to be understanding with each other and come to a compromise when it comes to that. And so I'm pretty much done with all the yapping. If you guys have any questions, I will be open to answering them. I am an open book, and if you came over here from my other channel, you pretty much already know that I'm an open book. I want this channel to be where like it's judgment free, and it's a safe space for people to open up and talk. You can ask questions if you want. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions, I'm here. I'm going to be on here for another 8 minutes because I want these lives to be about an hour long. So that way I can speak what I need to speak on, interact with you guys in the chat, and answer any questions that you might have when it comes to um, raising and parenting a child. Right now, honestly, for me, it's a day by day situation. Like yesterday, she was discharged, and then today we went and did an intake appointment for her to start a partial program. And then after we got home, she asked if she can go out with her friends, and I told her sure. I just need to know where they live at, their phone numbers, and where you're going to be at, because as long as I know where you're at, I won't report you missing. Like that's the only reason why it went to that extreme, was that she was a runaway, or she was a missing person, because I honestly didn't know where she was. If I knew where she was and I had a way to get a hold of her, I wouldn't have reported her missing. I wouldn't claim her as a runaway if I knew exactly where she was. And now that we have that understanding, you know, it's it's not even an issue. I told her, and then I explained to her why. I said, God forbid if anything ever happens to me and dad, you know, you being the oldest, you may have to be available for your other siblings until we another adult comes into the picture to help out. Because I mean, obviously, if something were to happen to me or my husband or both of us at the same time, of course we have, other family members that will step in and help. But people work, people have things to do themselves. But with her being the oldest, if something happens and we need her to be here for her siblings, even if it's for an hour or two, we have to know where she is, and we have to have the ability to get a hold of her. And she understood when I said that. I mean, I told her, I said, I'm not making it seem like you have to raise your brothers and sisters, but like, when it comes down to an emergency, we need to know where you're at all times. And if something were to happen to you, and authorities come to us and they're like, well, how come you didn't know your child was there and it was an emergency? That's how it is. That's why it has to be known. How's your relationship with your daughter now? It's we're at a place now to where we can actually conversate and talk, and I think it's because of the medication. The medication has helped her. She's been on it for about a couple weeks now. So, and I've been on mine for a while. So, like, I've been more open and like less like defensive. I guess that's the correct word to say. Defensive. Same with her. She's not as defensive as she was before when it came to um, us having conversations before. Because before she would get defensive and blow up and get explosive, and I would too. Like in certain situations, me and her would just be like, "Rawr," and that's because I was being untreated and she was being untreated. Now that we've both been on medication and we're kind of on a regular schedule with it, um, it's not as explosive. It's more of like a better conversation. It's like, and it's funny because like when I was going over her paperwork, she explained some of her triggers, and I'm like, me and you have the same exact triggers. Like our triggers are the exact same thing. So it's like, but the thing is that our reaction to those triggers and how we respond to those things are different. She responds, her anxiety response is different than my anxiety response. But even though our triggers are the same, we both have to be aware of how the other person is reacting to that trigger. Same with my husband. I'm starting now to understand that, you know, when I used to go like, "Are you okay?" and it seemed like he was like angry and upset, or and he's just like, "I'm fine," and then like, or he just blows me off. But now I'm starting to understand that it's not towards me. It's not even towards the kids. It's more so of the fact that, he has trauma. He was in the military, he was, on a ship and have had, combats and stuff like that. So he's been through some trauma as well as his childhood. He's been through some trauma in his childhood. And then, he has OCD, he has social anxiety. So like, and his response to those triggers are completely different than how I respond to them or how the kids responds to them. So it makes it's more about being aware of what's going on, and that's something that I'm trying to do better at, is being more present. I'm here, I could be aware, but if I'm not present in the moment, I'm not gonna see what I need to see in order for it to become a better situation for us to be able to communicate and work together on it. Thank you so much for your transparency. You're touching so many lives. You haven't even encouraged other YouTube creators. You have been mentioned by name. I didn't know somebody mentioned me. Belinda, you guys are really trying very hard to help your daughter through all this. Yeah, we are. And it's not just her, it's all of us. I've already reached out to all the schools. Like the schools know everything. I've had the schools um, get the kids involved with mental health support, regardless if they need it or not. I signed them up for it anyways, just in case, because of what's been going on in our home. And and it's obvious, the teachers are going to notice if something's going on, especially if the kids are not acting like they normally would. So I made sure to let the teachers know, as well as the school, the social workers, and the counselors know what was going on. So that way, if something ever happened, or if the kids ever, you know, reacted or acted a certain way, they understood why they were being that way. And, in most cases, it was mostly Andrea that was acting like not acting out, but more of like, she started shutting down and putting up walls to where, she wasn't as her socially as who she is. Before she was like this bubbly person, dramatic personality, and now now she's like kind of put up a wall to where like she like when I took her to her job interview, she had a full blown panic attack. She was about to she said it, I'm about to pass out, I'm about to throw up, I'm about to like she had a full on blown panic attack. She still has her job. Her job is waiting for her to come back. Um, and for her, it's interacting with other people. Like she has a social anxiety. I also found out that her actual that the disorder is actually called an illness anxiety disorder. It's not called hydrochondriac. It's not called that anymore. It's called illness anxiety disorder, where if you have like one little symptom, you believe you're going to die. And like she has that as well. She has ADHD. But with her, seeing how what's going on with her sister, she chose it was her choice because up here in Pennsylvania, 14 and up, they can seek out mental health treatment without my consent. And I can't take that away from her. So she's the one that chose to get into therapy and go in a different route than how her sister did. But her diagnosis is nothing compared to what Akina's diagnosis is. Hers is more of like anxiety, whereas Akina is more of bipolar, and it's more of a chemical imbalance. Um, you guys, are y'all still scared of her due to what was in her journal? No. And the journal entries was actually the thoughts that were from her disorder. That's something that I would and I told her this. I said at some point we thought you was a serial killer, and you was going to kill us and kill everybody else. And she said I was really in a dark place at that time, and she said she was really in a dark place. And it was just the thoughts that were coming to her head. She said she wasn't hearing thoughts like words, like she wasn't hearing voices, but it was just like her thought process was in that place to where that's why she was writing the things that she was writing. And I've had the DA call me and say, you know what, everything that was in the journal, we didn't see any, like, nothing came up to show any of that, because the authorities were involved in that situation. But yeah, so yeah, we're not scared of her anymore, because she was honest and she said, I was just in a very dark place, and my thoughts were just like, I'm just gonna do that's what I want to do. And and it's sad because like there's a lot of kids out there that are also struggling and going through the same thing, but when they're not being treated for mental health, they actually act out on it because they don't know any other way to manage or cope with it. Good for Andrea for reaching out for help. Yeah, she she's the opposite of I would say her and Nikina are like polar opposite, but I say the same thing about me and Leon. Me and Leon are the polar opposite. But somehow we kind of like blend in together. Like her and Akina are like best friends, whereas I'm hoping it's going to be the same with Azara and Araya, where they become best friends. Right now the boys are like clashing with each other. But I feel like at some point in time when they get older, they'll be best friends as well, and they'll have each other's back. Um, and so I'm not too much worried because 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, you know how that is with boys. Boys are crazy. Boys are like they're the complete opposite of girls, and I'm thankful that I only have them two because I don't know if I can handle any more boys because them two are a lot. Whew. So I really think this was a great live, and I do want to talk more about this stuff, but I also want to switch it up too. So, um, if you guys have any like topics you want me to talk about, videos that you think that will be interesting for you guys for me to talk about, where we could discuss it, because it's Tuesday today, and I do plan on going live Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays around this time, like 9:30, because it depends on when the baby decides to go to sleep. Because it has to be after she goes to bed, because or what if I do an a live during the daytime, it's most likely because she's taking a nap. Um, but usually during that time, I try to get as much work or cleaning done around the house, because any other time I can't get it done. So usually around this time will be the best time for me to go live, hang out with you guys. And then the reason why I chose to do lives on this channel is because these topics I want to talk about, I feel like it would be better to like interact with you guys, and you guys comment and I can respond to the comments in real time than me uploading a video and then I have to come and constantly check the comments to see what you guys said, and then see if I like how to respond to them and all that. And it's hard for me to now to respond to everybody. I don't know if you guys remember, but like I used to like everybody's comments and I used to try and respond to everybody. And with everything that I have going on, it's so hard for me to do that. Like I can't do it. Not like I used to. I'll heart a few people's comments and then I'll comment to a few people. But that's because I'm like either in a car and I quickly like have time to like check the app and go through it. But as far as like being able to sit on a computer and going through every single comment, I can't do that anymore. So I figured doing lives gives us the opportunity to engage with each other, talk, get to know each other on a different level. Because I know some people, aren't comfortable talking about certain things on in the comments or even on the lives. And if that's the case, then if it's a live and you share something that you're not comfortable with, I can shut down the chat replay. That's not a big deal for me. I mean, I want this to be a safe space, and I don't want nobody to feel like um, their business is putting out there, because then that way you will feel like your information is safe and nobody knows what's going on. Um, but my email is my first and last name on this channel at gmail.com. So if there is something that you want to talk about, or if that you want to share something, but you don't want me to tell people who you are, but you want, us to discuss it as a topic on this channel, I'm open to that as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this live. I'm going to end it here. And yeah, I think this was a great live. So, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Share it, please, because I feel like other people out there can actually learn something from other like from this situation. Because I rarely ever see people when I Google stuff about parenting with bipolar and raising a child with bipolar, I don't see any stuff like that. And for me, I feel like this was a great topic to talk about because it's a different perspective and a different point of view of what it's really like. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one that's dealing with this, because I bet there's millions of people out there that are dealing with the same situation, but they don't feel comfortable, or they don't know how to go and discuss it and talk about it. So enough of me rambling, because I told y'all I go off topic sometimes. And I'll see you on the next live. Be sure to come back Thursday. And Thursday like between 9:30. Because usually the baby goes down at like, it depends. It depends on, but I would say like 9:30 is usually the time I will go live on this channel, and we will have our discussions and chat and hang out, and sometimes we might have a party. All right, so bye guys.